Welcome to my bathroom and a darkroom in the same time. So today I will print interesting frame with an interesting composition from my trip to Vienna in 2020 in the beginning of the year. So let's unpack larger and start printing. Yesterday I made a few orders of the new chemistry and I actually want to try the Adox RA4 chemistry, and it's actually only 2 bottles. And I stopped using the stop bath for my development of the paper. Just probably it's too much of the problem to make additional rotation for 45 seconds. So if you do everything by hand, it can be quite annoying. So it means I just need to optimize my procedure because it's actually limiting my precision and quality of my work. Sometimes it takes a long time to find the proper negative, and probably in future I will take an effort and make a contact sheets, at least the digital ones, to store the catalog in my Lightroom to easily search for different negatives. For me personally, actually work with a physical product as a negative have completely different vibe, and I actually go back in time multiple times for the same photos, for different photos from the same trip, and now I even make different prints and search for different types of work from the same period of time. And when you shoot digitally, which I almost stopped in years, I almost never go literally back in time and search for different shots and try to make a different development in digital way of the same negative or raw file. As you can see here, I have a struggle with this timer, so the analog darkroom and analog process for sure have a quirks and some problems. You need to know your settings and you need to make a lot of decisions about your craft. But the thing is, this is one of the most important things. Your art is actually accumulation of all of your decisions about the things what you do about the picture. And even if you have something automatic like digital camera, it doesn't really matter because you anyway choose and make a decision to buy this exact camera. But with the analog photography you actually have multiple choices and much higher variety of things. Your film stock is actually changing the perspective and feeling what you're using, your size, your format, your printing, your development, and so on and so forth. And trust me, your final product is actually quite unique because you have a decision on each step and you're certain about each one because you tested multiple times. And meanwhile, when I finish development of my paper, I have around 40 rotation runs in my drum for the same chemistry kit, and my developer actually starting to change color and became more dark. It means I have shift in a pH of the chemistry, and around rotation number 40 with my setup I have almost no volume of the color developer. And the biggest emotional problem here, if you want to buy chemistry, it's much better to buy it like a lot for 5 liters. And the same thing goes to the film. So if you're buying the film, it's much better to buy a lot now and just consume it over the year. And if you take a look on your spending, it's actually not so expensive. It's just expensive once per year. And the rest of the time you're just consuming what you bought, for example, like in January. I actually not shoot a lot of film as you might think. In my calculations, I actually shoot 2 to 3 rolls per month. And this shot is also made with a Kodak 200 Gold. And I shoot this film just because I like it and not just because it's cheap. But one roll in Germany costs around 2-3 euros before crisis of Kodak. But even now it's dirt cheap. So this first test print show really good balance, probably a bit on the cooler side on the buildings, and when we dry it we can assume if I want to change something or not really. Because Dart Enlarger it's quite precise tool, I even don't need to check the focus. If I'm not touching the enlarger scales, I have the same sharpness and probably this picture a bit too neutral, and I compensate for the Kodak Gold's warm tones. So for this particular print, I want to make test prints and go with the yellow channel a little bit lower to create more warmth on the wall. Sometimes it can be too much and you just need to make tests and test print it and compare. So let's quickly wash out the prints and check the final results, what I came up with the testing. So I make a steps classically of 5. So when you reduce the yellow channel, it means you're increasing warmth of the picture. It's not really like right way to do it because you can increase a little bit of dirt color and it can be not so bright and not so perfect with the color balance. Unfortunately, in this method, you cannot increase the warmth, for example, only in the mid-tones, you're just increasing everything on the picture. But even with a step of 5, we don't need a lot of correction here, because the initial setting was almost perfectly fine. I will put the 65 on the yellow setting and make additional exposure and make a final print. So far, I don't see any problems with the color developer, so I have a pure blacks. Maybe it's not so saturated, maybe it's not so perfect. And one day I will probably compare the fresh chemistry with the exhaust, like 40 rotations chemistry. But for now, let's dry the prints and inspect if I have a proper corrections and if I choose everything right and I like the composition, picture and the crop. Usually Kodak Gold have an amazing rendition of the skies, and it's much better to overexpose this film, and unfortunately it doesn't really hold up with a low exposure because it's only ISO 200, so it has much more dynamic range in the top end. In reality, you can push your shadows and bring all the details if you just shot it on like ISO 50. For example, this shot was taken on ISO 100 and just developed normally. And as you can see, I have f8, so it means I have a little bit more density on this negative, but I really like the final corrections here, what I make with the yellow channel, and this crop looks a bit more better, and I really like the warmth which I contain from the Kodak Gold 200. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next videos.